Good evening and welcome to another episode of Life is People. And tonight I'm going to be speaking to Paige. Now, me and Paige go back a kind of long and windy road. Really, we kind of met last year in a fine summer's day in Troon, in the back end of of the headquarters that is MaidSafe. So it's been a kind of long way. Before I kind of go any further, I think I have to sort of say this. I mean, we've just done our year anniversary doing this podcast, and one of the things I have to sort of say to you personally is that it was kind of that day and that whole moment we met down in Troon that kind of kicked this off for me. So it's been, it's been a great thing. So anyway, before we go any further, how are you doing tonight, Paige?
I'm doing good. It's still daytime here in California, but doing good. Had a good morning, and yeah, there's a Bitcoin meetup tonight that I'll be going to. So.
But like I say, I mean, we kind of, like I say, we met last year in Troon. So you've been, as most people know, you've been kind of around MaidSafe and involved with MaidSafe for kind of, nearly almost 2 years, 18 months, something like that.
Yeah, so I met them March of last year, so about that much time. And I met them at the Texas Bitcoin Conference, which I think is also the place that Ernie Hancock met them. And I've been, with them ever since, basically. It's kind of a match that was meant to be, I suppose.
So I mean, obviously before you met MaidSafe, I know you kind of you kind of being at art college and stuff like this. So what kind of got you onto this journey of just basically, which ended up in you kind of, being where you are now? Because was it a gradual thing, or was it something you had, since you were a child, this desire to be, sort of fly the flag for people who want to be free and, secure and stuff?
I think it was a combination of a bunch of things actually that led me to this. So yeah, I did. I went to art school. I went to Massachusetts College of Art and got a degree in this thing that they call interrelated media, which is essentially just do whatever the hell you want. And as long as there's like a solid concept and, good effort and like, meaning behind what you're doing, then it's good to go. And they also did a lot of studying of like event production and curating shows and things like that. So it's kind of an all-encompassing program that enabled me to kind of keep my mind open and explore different paths of expressing myself. And I got really into like math art and like playing with kaleidoscopes and so I was doing photography for a little while with like these gigantic kaleidoscopes, and I ended up learning a few like really basic programming things with like Maximus P and pure data and processing, all very like kind of artist-centric interactive type programming environments, and went on to do a lot of things that and kind of look I actually had one professor who was not even in the department I was studying. He was with the kind of more academic critical studies aspect, and he was teaching biology at Mass Art. But he was really into robotics, and he was just a really passionate person, and he ended up completely changing the curriculum from this like biology 101 type standard thing to this course that was really focused on what artists would be interested in terms of biology. So like fractals and just like game of life type concepts, and he made it into this really, really inspiring class that I think really fueled me to kind of push myself. So definitely credit to him. Thanks, Dan Rowe. And just like kind of going on that path and thinking about nature and thinking about natural systems and complexity in nature, and how spontaneous, all various things just happen on them in and of themselves. So I guess I was kind of already going towards the path of what David had been thinking about for a long time as well, in a completely separate world. Eventually after school, moved to San Francisco, got really, almost, I don't know if it's luck or what, but I ended up finding this small startup called Open Garden through a Craigslist ad and applying as an intern there. So I ended up just being an intern and like learning various things and helping them out where I could. And that kind of extended out into becoming their community manager. And I ended up working at Open Garden, who is, if people aren't aware, they make this application called Fire Chat, which got pretty big in Hong Kong during the protests for peer-to-peer communications. And so, my experience with them, I became more aware of, decentralized technologies and the power of mesh networking. And I guess simultaneously, I was also realizing that I was an anarchist, and I, like getting frustrated with various political situations in the US, and being really enthusiastic about Ron Paul, and realizing that was just like a waste of my time completely, like wasting an entire summer on helping his campaign. So it all just kind of accumulated, and eventually ran into Bitcoin, had a few friends that were into that through this liberty movement that I was partaking in. And then Bitcoin, went to a bunch of Bitcoin conferences, made a bunch of friends through that, and ended up going to the Texas Bitcoin conference, which is where I met David and Nick. And I think I had read the Wired article already, so I knew a little bit about them, but I don't even think I knew they were presenting at this conference. I just kind of randomly walked in, and like it was like, oh, there's this talk going on that seems interesting. I'll check it out. And then I guess, history's from there. It was just like blew me away, and I think they could tell I was really excited. And I was also kind of transitioning out of working for Open Garden, so it worked out really well.
But you've been on an absolute crazy journey since then, because I mean, for anyone who I recommend go on to YouTube and just type in Paige Peterson and MaidSafe, and you'll see you pop up all over the world, man. You kind of been you've been on a world tour ever since you kind of been on this. So you must have had some really inspiring moments along the journey since you've been on this, like I say, this crazy journey around the world. I mean, what of all the ones if you've been to, that really kind of inspired you the most?
Well, I guess before I say that, I want to say that MaidSafe has been really supportive of me. I have done like a little bit of kind of public speaking before that, having helped organize the San Francisco Bitcoin meetups here and like moderating things. But it was kind of like doing talks for MaidSafe at especially at the very start. They were some of the first times I had been speaking in front of larger audiences, so they kind of just threw their confidence behind me and just like said go for it. And I think it did take a little bit of time to get over various nerves, and perhaps I'm still a little nervous sometimes, but I definitely really appreciate the opportunity that they've given me to kind of just like throw myself out there and kind of push myself to become more comfortable speaking in front of people, because it's I never thought I would be that kind of person ever, actually. I was the very shy person in high school and whatnot. So it's been quite a change of pace for me. But in terms of the communities that I've met, I mean, I I guess it's hard to pick just one, but I definitely am just really inspired by the very. So I went to this one conference in. I guess it's like, I don't even know if you call it a conference. It was a small gathering of mesh networking enthusiasts and uh, people that had started mesh networks in local communities and or were interested in starting one. And that's called Battle Mesh, and that happens every year. And that's honestly more focused more towards the engineers and the technical people, because they're actually testing the various mesh routing protocols against each other. They have like a router test bed that they set up and configure everything. And so half of the conference is actually that, the focus is on that. But the rest of the conference is really just about meeting different people, and it was really inspiring to hear stories about just people just being driven to support their community without much drive for anything else. So just having a lack of infrastructure in various communities and wanting to support their own communities just out of sheer will and just knowing their neighbors and things like that. So I think, in terms of being inspired by communities, I had a really good time there, and met a lot of interesting people that were really interested in finding, more secure ways to allow mesh networks to exist. So there's kind of the general problem in mesh networking that you can't. It's just generally not seen as a secure communications. It's for making access. It's for opening up access to different kinds of people and different communities, but there isn't a real focus on how do we secure these networks in a proper fashion. And I think being able to tell people, those people, about MaidSafe and hear what various concerns that they would have, or just how MaidSafe would sort of work within those communities and within that technology, because in the end, MaidSafe is this really great platform that's decentralizing the internet. However, getting access to that internet is kind of the one barrier to entry. So if you don't have internet access, then you're not connecting to MaidSafe, so or to the Safe network. So just being able to sort of figure out and talk to different communities that are working on different types of solutions, I think has been one of my favorite ones. I won't say my most favorite, because I don't know if I have one, but. And then also, actually, the Rust communities, talking to different Rust meetups has been fun, because they're completely not Bitcoin people or anything. Like, they're not the type of people that I've been hanging out with for the past couple of years. So it's really nice to kind of get a fresh perspective on how I present MaidSafe and how they get excited about using the Safe network infrastructure. So meeting the Rust communities is good.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that you talk about that, Paige, about the mesh networks, and it's one of the things that I've been kind of like digging into, through this podcast and stuff in the last few weeks, and I've spoken to some people. Like just recently, spoke to someone in Argentina, and he was telling me about how a city like Buenos Aires is completely meshed up, you know. And what I find is fascinating what you just said then, because it chimes a bell that people all around the world are finding their own solutions to this, and you know, it seems to be people. If you leave people to their own solutions, they can find it. Now, in these travels you've gone around, in the meetings you're finding, are you finding that different people around the world are approaching the benefits of what the Safe Network can offer from different angles? So some people around the world are seeing it more as a privacy, you know, a solution to privacy, and some people are seeing it for a solution for trading. And are you getting that kind of perspective around the world, that different people are seeing different benefits, or is it a very common one that most people around the world are saying we all want the same thing?
Well, I guess there is kind of a skewed perspective of the Safe Network when talking to people in the Bitcoin community, because they're already thinking about cryptocurrencies, so they're more inclined to talk about the coin aspect of things. However, I'd say, you know, I think generally people are interested in, and maybe they have different reasonings for being interested in it, but I think everyone kind of has the same interest in protecting privacy of users and their data. Whether it's, you know, whether you're a user yourself and you don't want your data to be stored on a server to be hacked, you know, at any point, or you're a developer and you don't want to make your users vulnerable to that sort of thing, or even if you, like, maybe you don't even care about your users and you just don't want to be liable for their data at all. So I think in the end it's always coming down to just appreciating a more private internet. And you know, I don't think most people kind of come from it from the angle that perhaps like myself and you and David kind of see it as like a more natural way to be building an internet. And I don't think people quite see it from that angle yet. I think once it's functioning and running and we can kind of make that analogy more clear, it'll click for people. But I don't. I think the fact that it is all
Yourself, who's particularly going out there and every day you're flying the flag and you're meeting people and stuff, and I think the point you're making then about why people in the outside community don't get it, I think most people, they've almost become, I don't know, it's the old Bill Hicks one. They become sheeple. They become almost immune to what's going on above them, and they think, oh well, the NSA are watching my stuff, but hey, it doesn't really, they don't really understand the implications of, I think, what's going on out there. But I think beyond the privacy one thing, I think it's something you know, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because you said you've got background in programming, is basically how central points and centralization just means that they're weak points of failure, and I see it from a non-technical point of view. I just think the whole thing's going to collapse. I just can't see how centralized, and we talked about when we were in Tune last year about how David was mentioning about how I think it was like the whole world was done by, I think it was 110 servers in general, and it was scary. You think this, so from an angle that you're coming from, and you're out there speaking to normal people, how do you try to get this across to people about why this is important, why MaidSafe and the whole Safe Network is actually important to normal people, not just your coders and your app developers?
Well, I mean, it's not even really. I mean, it's not even really coming down to me having to convince them anymore at this point, because there are, if not weekly, then daily examples of why people shouldn't be trusting servers with their data. I mean, it's like Patreon happened, a few days ago, and then like there's, like I don't know if I think people are kind of seeing the flaws in the centralized models more and more, and it will just straight up come down to the fact that they need to see examples of it. And it's almost like, you know, I guess, I don't know if it's the best sort of metaphor to say, but almost like just being able to adapt yourselves. And if you aren't able to adapt and realize that centralized structures are weak points and can potentially harm you, then you're just like the weakest in this ecosystem. I mean, it's not. People are gonna come around. They're gonna start seeing examples, and then once MaidSafe comes up, and people are building applications, and they have solutions to be able to move their data to, it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a pretty smooth transition. It really does come down to the facts. Like, you don't even need to talk about the NSA when you're talking to people about centralized systems, because it just everyone's kind of, put that in the back of their head, and they've to quote Obama, they've become numb to like this kind of course, he didn't say it about this. He was talking about the shootings, but they've become numb to surveillance, right? And so you need to talk about examples that are like, that are happening every day, that you can reference, like explicit things that are happening. Like, people on Patreon had private messages completely exposed, and that is actually one platform that a lot of people that are in our kind of realm were excited about. Even though it is technically centralized, it was kind of enabling, artists and creators to make income, without being so dependent on, various other methods, or kind of propagation, third-party people. But so in the end, it kind of leads, specifically with Patreon, it kind of led the way that, like, even though you are getting money directly from people that directly appreciate you, you're still depending on this centralized, or just a third party that uses a centralized infrastructure. If Patreon just decided to, switch over to MaidSafe when it's switch over to the Safe network when it's live, then people would kind of see the distinctness of what the Safe network brings.
Yeah, and I know that one of the common threads that me and you particularly have, and I know David has particularly, and I think it's kind of runs through the kind of whole MaidSafe community, as far as I can see. There's been a lot of admiration for someone I think we all hold in kind of not heroic status, but kind of he's a kind of light for us. Is Bill Hicks. Now, I've often thought about this, and and we kind of touched upon it when we spoke last year, that I wondered, that what people like Bill would have thought about all this, because I mean, it's one of my motivations. I think I think Bill would have loved the age we are in now, this idea of connection. But equally, it's the same thing. I mean, we're still finding the same pushback that he had back in the day, that people are becoming sheeple, and they are becoming very, almost, very kind of just dependent on things, and almost becoming very, like you said, numb to how what's going on around them. So, like I say, we've had that Bill sort of thing in mind. I mean, it's someone who kind of has been a kind of I know you like Bill Hicks and stuff. Where do you think that someone like Bill would have thought about today's world? I mean, what do you think he would have made of the Safe network and stuff?
Well, I guess I do often think about what Bill would be saying about various political incidences and situations that are happening today. He's definitely probably the one person I think about when I wonder, like, I kind of wish to have his perspective on it, just if not for some clarity, then definitely for to make it a little more lighthearted and to make me laugh. But I think the one thing that I like about Bill is that he's a little different than a lot of. He has a different perspective than a lot of people that I hang out with that are libertarians. He's not really he's not really libertarian. He has more of like a socialist kind of strain to him, which I really appreciate. Kind of that dynamic, and being brought back to that dynamic, and realizing that to succeed and to overcome the really profound challenges that we have, we definitely need to be working together, and just we like there to not to like conflate it with like sort of like things that can be manipulated, and it's easy to become a little bit I don't know the word, but just being like, you can become dependent on sort of like spiritual type thoughts, and I guess that's where sort of problems within religion arise and things like that. But kind of realizing that it's not either or. It's not about just like being completely individualistic and being 100% self-responsible and not depending on anyone else. There is still that dynamic of like, you can't do everything out on your own as a person. There is still this aspect of collectivism that is inherent in everything that we do in society, in our interactions with people, and the free market is like, you are very much dependent on other people, and so I think Bill would have a really interesting perspective on how the internet is today, and perhaps what the Safe Network brings to the internet by putting it more in the hands of people, but realizing that we're all in it together, and we're all depending on each other to keep it up, and to have, for example, we need enough people on this network so that it's harder to be attacked. Like, the less people on the Safe Network, then the much easier it becomes for someone like the US government or Google to set up a bunch of nodes and begin to attack the network. So we are very dependent on kind of this global idea of like a greater good. We're all contributing to this thing together. Because we want ourselves to prosper, but for everyone else to prosper as well. So perhaps Bill would be a little critical of the Safe coin, but I could see him being a little bit iffy about the monetary aspect, which honestly sometimes I think about, and like the like straight up focus on SafeCoin, kind of, when people are so focused on it that everything else on the network is like lost to them, it frustrates me a little, because it's not like the coin is just like this extra thing to help with like the fact that we're humans and that people try to take advantage of things. So the coin is honestly not the cool part of it. And I hope people in like the Bitcoin community kind of, at least maybe if they don't realize it now, then they will once it's launched, and they can see everything that's coming out of the Safe Network. besides, this anonymous coin.
Yeah, I think, Paige, that's the perfect analogy for that would be that would be like looking at an ant colony and just focusing on the rice. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
there's a greater intelligence going on to your left, and you're just focusing on a bit of rice. I mean,
Yep.
I think one of the things that I think we both come from a kind of an artsy background on this, and I think one of the things that's inspired me from day one when I heard about the Safe Network and MaidSafe generally was it's going to give the ability for creative people to come together and shape this. This is what I love about the whole of the whole of the Safe Network. There's not one leader, and we're all just we're all following one leader. We can all shape this. The artists and the creative people. So going kind of like a full kind of loop back to where we sort of started with you being at art college and stuff. What do you think the big things that that how the arts community, are going to, could shape this and what they could use from it and how, because I've got plenty of ideas. I can see artists all around the world collaborating and stuff like this. But you're from an arts background. I mean, what excites you about the Safe Network and arts in particular and that going forward?
Man, I mean, so the Safe Network in terms of art, I think, um, obviously there's the Safe Network would bring a lot of benefit to digital art or art that can exist on the internet, um, and I mean, it kind of depends on what sort of medium you're talking about, but I think it just opens up a world of possibilities for artists to think about new ways to make a living without being so dependent on Patreon or grants or sponsorships or things like that. I think the the sort of like being able to do microtransactions and pay people on a more uh, just a fluid basis based on their work or what type of work they do, I think is I think is really, I think it's very much needed because right now the art world is pretty stifled, and I honestly am struggling with just like sort of wanting to get back into art, but not really having I mean, it kind of there's a lot of reasons why I'm not able to do that at this moment right now, but one of them is like how am I gonna like have the time to make like large pieces of art, which um, probably would be some like sort of installation, like in-person sculpture thing, and like still get paid without like having to work all the time and live in San Francisco and like all of these really expensive life things. I think can sort of be restructured um, when we think about services and content and the work that people do in a different perspective. I think there's a lot of opportunity to push the concepts of and rethinking of how we pay people, how people interact with saving money, or how much people save, whether it's more important to kind of push the savings that you have out to other people and help sustain them. I think there's just a lot of opportunity for to sort of just like make to change the market for how artists interact with other people, so that they can do the work that they want to do, um, and that other people appreciate them doing, without having to be so dependent on grants, and large donors. Because I think that's what drives a lot of the art is grants.
Mm. I mean, one of the things I think is going to be, I think once the art community in particular get their head around this, and I think filmmakers and I think all creative people, particularly they're in the visual arts or particularly, is the idea that, you know, when they get their head around the concept that on the Safe network, that once you upload your stuff and put it onto the Safe network, it's never going to be destroyed. Now, I've had plenty of pieces of my artwork that have just been lost in, or, you know, when I've been at uni and I've written loads and they've sort of been lost because your laptop has a black, you know, the black screen of death or something. And these are small things, because like you would know, there's nothing worse in your life when you spend months and months and months creating something and you put all your effort into it, and then you go back to and you're like, where's it gone? Oh, it's just disappeared. And
Mm-hmm.
I think these are the small things that, like you were saying earlier on, I don't think the people in the wider population haven't really understood about how insecure their information is particularly when you put it up on servers. I mean, you know more than anyone else, there's nothing right now really that you can say is 100% secure. That's why
Yeah,
we build a self network.
for sure. And also with with artists, it kind of, or just content in general, not even artists, just being able to kind of see content, digital content, in a different light, and realizing that, and perhaps Bill would actually have a really good comment on like the concept of digital property in today's, like, what that means. I think he would have some really funny things to say about, like, our asphyxiation on, you know on music, or books or art pieces, and and like charging people for them based, like, in a really kind of weird model that kind of puts this artificial scarcity on digital content, because that's the only way for you to sort of make money now, as opposed to realizing that digital content is not scarce. You can replicate it as many times as you have storage space. And with the Safe network, that doesn't even exist, because all you're doing is giving everyone access to a piece of content through the key infrastructure. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for the Safe network to open up people's minds about scarcity of goods, scarcity of digital content, and kind of promote more more collaborative ways, and promote sort of applications that allow people to collaborate more, and build on top of each other and attribute each other, and just open up things like that, because it's really hard. It is hard to make a living off of digital content, and I think a lot of the ways that people do it today are artificial, because they don't have any other means to do it, because they're stuck in the model of property that's physical, that's just like mapped onto the internet, which doesn't really work.
Well, it's something that's fascinating, because that kind of bleeds into something I wanted to talk to you about anyway, because you wrote a fascinating blog just a few weeks back about, internet and Libre and freedom and the idea of being tracked and stuff. And I think what you just said then leads sort of onto that. So again, I mean, where do you think that that's going to lead? I mean, do you? I mean, I know we fly the flag, and we fly the flag for the Safe network and stuff like this. I mean, and we know that these huge corporations that, like you said, as you said in that blog piece you wrote about, the tracking us, and have got this idea, and we've almost become a species where we, like you were saying, so insightfully that we expect everything to be free, but then on the back of that freedom, we don't realize how much we're giving away. So do you think that's going to be a battle of mindsets, or do you think that's just going to be inevitability that once the safe net's switched on and people can understand the concepts of that, that will inevitably happen?
Um, yeah, I think it'll be a slow transition. I think it's going to take like um, the failures of the current infrastructure to happen, and hopefully the safe network is there to sort of catch people when they fall, or catch companies when they fall or something like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, people don't even realize, specifically with the web, how not private it is. Like I was trying to find, like, I almost ended up writing a little bit in that article about other things that track you on the web, but I thought that was going on too much of a tangent. But at one point I was kind of trying to find a website that doesn't use Google Analytics. And it's fucking impossible. It's like all websites use Google Analytics, which is essentially everyone that's, it's a tool for tracking how people flow through your website, where they come from, demographics on how people view your website. But all of that data is being pumped through Google, and they're the ones analyzing it, and they're the ones analyzing and like linking IP addresses and everything like that. So it's like, it's not even I don't know. I just like, it's very frustrating, and I was looking for even an alternative for perhaps websites that were more open-minded about or realizing that's a problem and not wanting to use it. But honestly, they don't really exist. If you want, or at least there isn't really an open source alternative that I could find. And so if you want any analytics on your website, then you are basically dependent on either Google or some really small, less feature full proprietary software to do that. Everything else is very outdated, and so yeah, the web is totally broken, and I wish people would realize it more. I guess I'm only, I'm really realizing a lot of the stuff uh, very recently about this myself. So it's all kind of hitting me really fast, and I just want other people to realize as well, like how much better the web could be if we stopped, basing our everything that we do on IP addresses, because the web is built on IP addresses, and that sucks.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
I mean, it fascinates me because as you know, I mean, I've had a few really long conversations with Daniel, obviously based down in San Francisco, and it's absolutely blown my mind really, because he was telling me about, you have hackathons where people can just walk off the street and they can have and all this kind of stuff. So what I'm fascinated, particularly because I know you're not native to the sort of San Francisco, but when you're mixing with the people that you are, and you said you've been to these Bitcoin conferences and stuff. Now, do you think the people in Google are aware of what's coming, or do you think that they're just basically just got their heads in the sand and think they're going to win this battle, or do you think that they just don't? They almost like think, well, it doesn't really matter anyway. That we've got inevitable kind of run throughs for the rest of the time. I mean, how do you think those communities are facing this?
well, I think Google in particular is a large community, so there's people in Google that are, for example, a lot of the ones focused on security are really smart people, and they do know what's coming. They do know that there's a huge problem with privacy and security on the internet. So they, with, they're the ones focusing on making making Chrome really secure. Chrome is known to be the most secure browser, and they're doing a lot of things that are making web browsing, making you less vulnerable to various situations when you're browsing the web. So there are, within Google, I'd say that there are communities that do know what's coming, but perhaps they see Google as kind of the best answer for now, so they are maybe simultaneously keeping their heads down. There's a lot of news about different projects kind of claiming similar things to what MaidSafe is trying to do, and that's been happening, I think, for the past 5 years or so. So maybe the Safe Network isn't in their perspective yet, just because they might see that it as this just another project that's trying to build a more decentralized internet. And I think, it's just going to take, for most people, it's just going to take the network existing and being able to join it and experiment with it to kind of come to the realization. So, I think I guess there's a different perspective. People know that there's people at Google and whatnot. They know there's failures, and there's a coming general failure for various centralized systems. But maybe they haven't seen a quite secure model yet for a decentralized system that makes them confident that this is that this is the future. I suppose there's Tor, which is decentralized in some aspects, but it's still, all the services are servers, and it still has kind of these centralized vulnerabilities within it, that we've seen examples of, even when that just through the various hidden services being able to be taken down just because the FBI or whoever found the servers. It's really based on the servers. So thinking about just the server problem, maybe not that many people are thinking about it, and they're just they have it in their head that this is we're stuck with it, so we might as well make it as best as possible the way that we have it. And hopefully the Safe Network existing will, change their mindset and make them realize that there's other options. I think, for the most part, yes, I do think that people think servers are going to exist forever. Unfortunately, at least for now, everything that all of the infrastructure that they're building is based on the server infrastructure. So they're maybe with the exception of BitTorrent, they've already thought a lot about decentralizing stuff, and they're working on their own project. So there's pockets of people, but they're mostly we're already thinking about this stuff, and it's still a pretty small community, I think. Hopefully with the Safe Network it will expand, though.
Yeah, it just strikes me as a really interesting sort of dynamic within, I don't know. I've never been to anyone or anyone associated in with Google, but they're obviously smart, intelligent people, and they're logical people, and they're rational people, and they understand reason and all this. And once you get to a certain point of just going down that path, you're going to realize, nature's decentralized, and this is how swarm intelligence works. So they're actually inevitable. This is how we should be advancing towards. But at some point, now, I don't know if that's a financial decision, whether that's, these are the deeper questions, but somewhere comes along the line and says, Well, instead of us as Google, who have all the power and all the money and all that resources to push this decentralization, they're intrinsically saying no, or like I say, holding their head back in the sand. And it just strikes me a lot of where everyone was maybe 120 years ago, that at the time, everything was being built around gas lamps, and the streets were all built for stage hall, for horse and carts. But along came the car, and that's what I'm trying to say. I mean, there must be people in Google, and especially in these other companies, who must be aware of what's coming. And I always strikes me to think, well, are Google just waiting to see what happens and then they're going to jump on board, or are they just thinking? And that's why it strikes me, because, like I said, you're in a very tech sort of savvy city, so people even if they're not interested in the safe network or decentralization, they must come to the same logical conclusion. And if they do come to the same logical conclusion and then think, oh well, okay, the future lies in central control, I don't understand that. So I'm fascinated, because you're right there in the midst of all the technical people. So I'm fascinated by that whole thing, and how that comes up, and these conversations come up, and what your feelings on that are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just comes down to the fact that everyone's just used to the server infrastructure, and they um, they see the enormous task it is to build a completely separate internet. Thankfully, MaidSafe is doing it for them. Uh, so So I don't know. I think I think in terms of Google, it comes down to individuals that might see the future of things. So various people at Google have quit and started working on projects within the Bitcoin space and things like that. So it all definitely is coming down to individuals. I think there's I don't know, it doesn't seem like there would be some sort of subsection of Google that would start focusing um, on building a completely separate internet, because they're just so dependent on the current one. And um, like, if they were successful, it would take a lot of resources to switch everything over to it. So it might be a combination of just being of just like keeping their head in the sand, and also realizing that how much work that it would come to be able to switch over. I do notice a lot of the thoughts about wanting a more decentralized web and internet coming from the uh, the activists and the people actually using the internet. So that's where I see a lot of the strongest push for more decentralized services, because they're the ones that are getting screwed over. So I mean, a really great example of a person I can think of is Brewster Kahle, who is the founder of the Internet Archive. And he has been doing a lot of talks around the world, just trying to push people to think about this idea of a decentralized web and a distributed web. I think he calls it a distributed web. But it's really, yes, he has a technical background, but Brewster is he's a very idealistic person. If you know anything about the Internet Archive, they try a bunch of different projects. They're not shy about trying new things and just going for new stuff. So this mindset is is coming about, but it's going to take, I think, the people that are a little more idealistic to push the more technical people to start thinking more about it, and thinking about how to solve the technical problems that come within it. And of course, MaidSafe has kind of given them a head start, so that they can do research around the safe network and analysis on the safe network, and see how to kind of build off of that, or any problems that they might see with that, and improve on it. But yeah, I think it really is a lot of this general interest in a decentralized internet is in the minds of non-technical people, and they're not really even thinking about it as a server problem, because they just see it as a problem where their data is being stolen or they're being censored. So, but in the end, it is a server problem because of that. And I guess I did. It was kind of random, but I met Phil Zimmerman, who created PGP. I met him about a year ago at a conference. He had just given a talk, and I just I was one of a few people kind of surrounding him after his talk, trying to get him talk to him a little bit. And I ended up mentioning MaidSafe, and I got him to say that, admit that servers were the problem. So the founder of PGP, and he's also, I don't know if he's still involved, but he was also one of the founders of Silent Circle, the Black Phone, that whole thing. So he's still very interested in privacy for users, and he did end up saying, when I briefly mentioned MaidSafe and the problems that we're trying to solve, he did mention that servers were the problem. So there are a few people that are seeing it, but I don't necessarily think that Phil Zimmerman was thinking about it in a more natural way. I think he was just seeing it logically, like servers are failing, like people are hacking into servers every day, so we need to not depend on them anymore. And if he took that a step further and sort of related it to other decentralized systems, he would realize that most of them are in nature, so there's a lot of correlation between that. And yeah, I don't know. I think there could be a lot more push for this idea for technologists and engineers to think about natural systems. And that's kind of one of the things that I'm hoping to do, talking more to various people, either about MaidSafe or just, my interest in general, getting more technologists to think about natural systems and evolution and emergence. So, yeah.
Yeah, it surprised me, Paige, that, like I said before, it surprised me that most people with a logical mind, they don't get to that logical conclusion, really. I mean, that to me just seems a bit of the old, I just don't get that, I don't understand.
I don't know. I guess there's just not that, I think maybe with, honestly, more like a right-brained perspective that you and I probably have, it's easier to make these comparisons between and draw kind of metaphors between them, because a lot of engineers and technologists are very left brain, so they're good at segmenting things and working on tasks and seeing those tasks through and all of that, but it's more difficult for those kinds of people to see larger pictures, see the gestalt, and so I think it's just a different kind of thought pattern that they just need to be opened up to, and that people like us could help them along with a little bit, help draw the metaphors a little bit more.
Well, I think it taps into what I was trying to say earlier on. I think this is one of I think it's an epoch moment of where we are as a human civilization, because, as I said, this isn't just being shaped by a set of coders, and that's why I try to fly the flag, and I want everybody to be involved in this, because one of my worries, Paige, is that, man, if something hits you, people like yourself, David, Dali, people like this, Man, I don't know. I haven't got a clue, and that's why I think it's important that we all try to get as much knowledge as possible. Now, it's something I've been discussing a lot with a lot of guests recently. I mean, what do you think that like I said, you've got an understanding of programming, and there's a lot of people that are, but what do you think that the things we can do to basically get a generation of people to actually understand about Rust and see, these languages and stuff? Because at the moment, as you know, they're alien to people outside of the coding community, and I think it's crucial that we need to get particularly kids, very young kids, learning this, because they are. I mean, that sounds cheesy, but they are the future, And so
Sure.
I'm sure. I'm interested to hear, your thoughts on this, because you're out there, programming, and as I said to you last year. I mean, I joke about it many times. When I went down to Troon first time met David, I joked about I'd learn C++, and he just laughed at me. Said, "Come on, man, chill. There's no point you even trying to learn C++. A coder will come along." But that's my worry. That at the moment, it's my worry that there's it's great that people can come up with ideas, but there's so many few coders, and I want that to be a language that's understood as much as picking up a pen and drawing a house on a piece of paper is. So I'm interested to hear, how do you think that can be progressed forward, and we can push this forward?
Yeah, so I mean, Rust is really promising as a language for uh, not for just even newcomers to programming in general. Maybe not the first language. I don't know. Maybe even the first language. Who knows? But um, the problem with lack of programmers, I think it's more of like a structural issue and schooling issue overall, and uh, I don't know, things like how just in general how school is, uh, in particular math, can be really boring to a lot of people, or a
Hmm.
lot of kids,
Hmm.
because they make it boring, and and there isn't any fun in it. And I think there there's like just this general idea of a you know structured curriculum and doing the same thing every year and not really having capacity to evolve that has been probably one of the larger uh, issues with getting more kids interested in programming. As a kid, I really liked math, but I hated math class, and I hated, I don't know, I liked solving the problems because they were fun as sort of like a puzzle sort of way, and that's how I ended up getting into like being interested in programming, because I saw everything as a puzzle. And um, and I think if there's some way to make kids more see it in more of that perspective, um, and even not kids, even just non-technical people, to see it more as a puzzle than like this big thing that you need to learn, like you need to learn the entire language. Just realizing that you can take it one step at a time, and there's a lot of opportunity to have fun with it. I got interested in programming because I wanted to make cool things that to project in a kaleidoscope. Like, that's basically, I mean, it's uh it, it really it really comes down to just being able to find the what a kid needs. Of course, all kids are different, but again, it's just not, it doesn't work with single like school structures, the way that we have it. There needs to be more open sort of education
Mm.
standards than what we currently have with school. So uh, yeah, I mean the lack of programming is more of a societal problem. I see a lot of problems that we have today more of societal problems, and but maybe that's just like my right brain thinking about like larger pictures and all that. But yeah, I don't know. I can't think of any like concrete, like minute things that we could do to, you know, get more kids interested in coding other than just making it more exciting to them. So not putting them in a classroom and doing it, but putting them, like, bringing them to places that do coding, or pushing for more companies to do internships with kids, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was more kind of thinking, you know, like, I think the way you describe it was perfect. Like, you can get daunted by maths and figures and numbers, and codes is exactly the same because it's all about binary, you know, and you're seeing things. So I was always wondering, you know, would there be, I don't know, I mean, would there be a possibility of, instead of looking at code, you could have it as colors? Or you could have it as notes and music. So you could have, instead of just having, okay, I've got to write all this out, I could compose in a, like we do as a musician, because you compose music in a way that's very, you know, you just jam it away and then you get something out of it. But with code, it seems very much, it's very structural. So I was wondering if those possibilities. I mean, these are very. I'm just chucking ideas out there, you know.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think doing coding is like, it's definitely not for everyone. I don't think, unless like you go for like very basic coding. So if you wanted to try to do something, um, with colors or notes or something, you wouldn't be able to get as low as you would with learning how to program Rust or C++. It's just, you need to know you need to know logic pretty well, and you need to understand these concepts pretty well to do that sort of programming. That's not to really deter anyone. It's just like an observation that there are different kinds of people in the world, and some people honestly just don't grasp programming as well as other people, and if they're stressing themselves out over it, then just taking it slower and realizing they're not, like, their brain just isn't like that way to be the best coder in the world, and they can be the best at something else while also, doing coding on the side or something like that. So it definitely, like, there there is a there is more need for people, everyone, to understand the importance of being able to develop software and hardware, and just the engineering and design in general. Um, but yeah, I mean, there are different ways to sort of engineer things. So there's different programs for like doing kind of more industrial design things that's less like writing code, and you're more just like designing objects in a 3D space. Or as I was saying in my introduction, there's different programs like Maximus P for artists. Maximus P is actually the proprietary version, but there's a free open version made by the same person who made Maximus P, and that's called Pure Data. And that's essentially like programming, but you're taking and it's still pretty complex, and you still need to take time to understand it. But instead of writing code, you have like blocks that you're connecting to other blocks, and it's almost like a electrical circuit as opposed to writing code. So you can kind of see how the design is, and kind of that definitely fits for certain types of brains to be able to like visualize what's going on as a circuit sort of. So yeah, I think there's ways to make programming easier for people, and to bring it um, closer to uh, all sorts of interests, but again, I don't think that there is like we shouldn't be too hard on people that like can't like that aren't able to understand C++ or Rust, because maybe that's just not where their brain is and not where their heart is, and we still need people doing other things in the world that aren't programming. So it's fine if people don't want to program, but it's also important to show kids the how fun it can be, because I think we are missing out a lot of opportunity in the way that schools are structured right now, and just making kids bored with a lot of things just simply because of the structure of how they're learning.
Well, I mean, Paige, this goes back to I think I think it's why it's vital that someone like yourself is standing up there and doing it, because, and I don't know, maybe I'm making very much over generalizations, but at the moment the world of coders is seen as a very male kind of geeky kind of profession. To say, so what you're doing is being very inspirational, because there's to be plenty of young 5-year-old little girls looking out there and going, wow, that Paige Peterson, I want to be that person, and that's what's needed. So I mean, I don't know, I may be making a very much generalization, because I'm not involved in the coding world, but if that's anywhere near the truth, how do you find it being flying the flag as a female in a very sort of male dominated world?
It's interesting. I can't say that I'm not like I code some. I do web development mostly, but I'm definitely not as skilled as a lot of as most developers, I'd say. I don't focus my time on it as much because I do enjoy doing other things like doing outreach and talking to people and making art and things like that. However, that said, I think it's quite interesting to see the dynamic of women in tech, and even looking more specifically at women in security. There are a lot of women developing security protocols and maintaining various platforms. So there's a lot of I don't know, if you start on this if you go on Twitter and start looking for women developers, you'll start going down this rabbit hole and realize that there's a lot of really, really smart women that are also just really inspiring, because that they're already questioning what is standard, and they're questioning authority, and most of them are kind of in the anarchist type mindset. So there's I think it's a matter of passion, and it's easy to be passionate about helping users become secure and be passionate about privacy. So I think that realm, and hopefully it ends up mapping over to developing the SAFE network. But I think there's a lot of misappropriated or misplaced passions, and kind of artificial passions in a lot of technology today, that because there's a lot of focus out here on venture capitalism and just making a business and making it blow up and being one of the top 10 apps and the productivity app store apps, all that. So it's not even about passion for helping people. It's more just about passion for pumping up your name, or something, making a lot of money. And I think I don't know why, but women aren't aren't usually found as much in that realm. Uh, so I don't know. Maybe it's just the way that we think in certain situations or whatnot. But where there is where there are women, technical women, they're in it for the passion, as far as I can tell. So I think that's the trend that we want to be seeing anyway. So screw the venture capitalist type people that are just trying to make money.
So this kind of projects into the future a bit here, Paige. So let's talk about, I don't know, let's go medium. We'll talk about 10 years down the line, and let's take let's take a kind of an optimistic view and think, okay, the safe net now has taken over. Not the sense okay, but that's now the default mode. Most people go onto the safe net rather than the old-fashioned internet as it is. So at that point, maybe in this kind of the vision we're laying out here, your role as flying the flag for MaidSafe is gone. So what would you want to build on top of the safe network? I mean, what's your, say it all went well, what would you kind of, is there any kind of plans you've got yourself, or any visions you want to do, or projects?
Well, I'm, you know, I guess I'm really interested in supporting artists and creators. I have I have I had been talking to this guy who was he it's kind of on a installing right now. He hasn't worked on it in a few years, but this guy that I met in when I was at school in Boston, uh, he had been working on this project called what was it called? It was basically focused on finding artifacts in the Library of Congress and using those to make videos and make music videos and just like showcase various artifacts that were found in the Library of Congress. And I think that would be fun to do kind of on a more general level with all sorts of art and all sorts of you know all sorts of content that's accessible on the Safe network. So when the Safe network has taken over and people kind of have a better idea of how to treat a digital property and intellectual property, um, uh, then we'd see. Then I would definitely like to see either myself or someone else build something where that artists could collaborate on a easier way that allows individuals to attribute each other, and almost like a GitHub for artists. So like you can fork someone else's art and you know make your own version, but you're still attributing it to them. But maybe not even keep it to art. Maybe it could be articles, it could be various content. So I definitely see just being able to push collaboration more between artists and of the content that they're producing, and help people understand that it's kind of silly to see digital content as the scarce thing, and we could be working with it in a completely different way.
It kind of reminds me of the idea for the Studio 99. I think we had gone through some of these ideas, right, Tim? The idea of if you're a musician and you have a riff and you put it out there, and then a drummer says, hey, I know exactly what I want to do with that, and this is the same idea. This is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it would definitely be great to see something like that, and but also kind of put out all of the have it incorporate all of the artifacts from before. So like the Library of Congress has a lot of really interesting photographs and just very historical historical content, and similar with the Internet Archive, they store a lot of data that is available for use. So just being able to just push that idea of building on top of other people's works and help people realize that that's what life is all about. So.
Yep. And then one of the things, Paige, that we spoke about last year, and I don't know how far that kind of went down the line really, but we talked about that whole basically let's all leave Facebook. Now I know that you have. I know you've vacated it, and I've been saying for a while I've 90% left it. The only reason I go on it is to sort of message people and stuff. But again, that was a really kind of an inspiring idea and stuff like this. And I thought I think this is something that I think we could almost start to sort of trump it up again, because my personal plans, and I don't know how you are, but the minute the Safe network is up and running full time, I'm leaving Twitter, I'm leaving Facebook, I'm leaving Google, I'm leaving the lot. I'm vacating, I'm out of here. So again, that was something that we talked about last year. That is that something that that you think we could sort of resurrect, and we could almost put a date on that, so when we know that the Safe Next is going to be launched on a large scale, we can say to people, look, on the next day, wherever that day may be, we all just walk away from Facebook.
Yes. I guess I would rather put the date on something where, so people aren't going to leave Facebook unless there is a similar platform with similar features that exists on a more secure network. So I would say, making that date more focused around like an application that's built to replace Facebook, because if you tell people to leave Facebook and tell them to use the Safe network, and there isn't, as much, there isn't at least very similar functionality, then people might be disappointed, and you don't want them to be disappointed. But I definitely think that a rally to leave Facebook, is great in general. Like, they don't need to go to anything else. I mean, Twitter, it's like, I guess Twitter's a little bit different because it's more just about, leaving them because they're using servers and they kind of have control. They have ultimate control over people, and so over users on their network, I should say. But yes, I think doing a rally, hopefully there will be a more social application on the network very soon after launch, or launch. I don't know. Launch is a very crude thing to say, because I don't think it's going to be more. It's not going to be like, yay, we're launched. It's going to be like, oh, I guess they're launched. Like that. It just transitioned, and now the network is real, and SafeCoin is in it, and everyone's farming, and so it's going to be more of like oh, I guess that happened. I better tell my friends about it and stuff like that. So I would suggest yes, but focus it on the date of someone's social network application that they're building on top of the network.
So speaking
and
of
maybe MaidSafe will do that.
Yeah, are there any conventions coming up? I think Francis was discussing having some kind of a convention maybe up in Montreal for MaidSafe or Safe Network. Have you heard anything about that?
I saw him like a few weeks ago when I went to Montreal for the Scaling Bitcoin conference, and he did mention wanting to do something like that still. The Bitcoin embassy there is huge. Like, they could definitely sustain an event. That said, I think it would depend on I think it would need to be after the network's kind of running and there's a few applications already built, and I think maybe focusing it on like focusing on having sort of a developer type conference from the very start would be really beneficial, just to bring developers together. And obviously enthusiasts would show up even if they're not developers, so that wouldn't really be a problem that it would be focused on developers. But I think having the focus on developers... What's that?
Tim and I will handle the idiots. We'll have the idiots.
No, don't say that. Well, it's like it's gonna happen. Like even with you know, the Scaling Bitcoin conference that was basically focused on engineers, there are definitely a few of us that were not Bitcoin engineers at all, and just really interested in seeing the, you know, the scaling aspect of it successful. But yeah, so I think something in Montreal would be perfect because it's kind of a center place between, like, people from the US could easily get there, people from Europe could easily get there, people that don't want to come into the US could still go.
People want to the US, what did you say?
People that don't want to come into the US.
Right, I'm just joking.
Yeah. Yes, there's plenty of people that don't want to come into the U.S. or can't come into the U.S.
Or wanted in the U.S.
Right, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So...
Cool. I personally would rather go to San Francisco, but Montreal's cool.
San Francisco is expensive. Like, doing a conference here would be very difficult. However, there is this... sort of collective group in Oakland, which is just across the bay from San Francisco, called the Omni Commons, and they're like a collective of collectives. So they have, like, Food Not Bombs is in there, and there's like a hacker space in there, and there's a biohacking space and a printmaking and all this, and they have a huge ballroom, which would be really cool. For, you know, an event between, like, you know, 100 and 300 people or so. Like,
what about running it on top of Burning Man?
Yeah, so at Burning Man or after?
Yeah, at Burning Man.
There's no internet at Burning Man.
That's okay. We'll just have the safe network. I'm sure we can get somebody with the satellite phone. That'll be the internet hub. And then, your mesh networking knowledge. We'll just have a bunch of mesh networked people to a satellite phone.
Yeah, you know, yeah, well, we could see. I mean, I think it would be best maybe if it was after or before, because then you could get all the people that were going to Burning Man to come to this as well. But I don't know. There's a lot of opportunity, and we definitely need to, once the network's live and functioning, you know, as essentially like a 1.0, whenever that's officially declared, it would be very beneficial to have some sort of event to bring everyone together soon thereafter. But in the meantime, just going to other conferences that have related missions. So there's actually a couple of conferences in New York coming up. One's called Radical Networks, and that's just about, like, you know, just kind of thinking about different ideas for networking, and, you know, thinking about technical and social problems with various networking issues. And then there's this other one called Platform Cooperativism, and that's like just like thinking about how to build better platforms that are more centered around the people and the users, and like how, I think one example they gave in the intro was, you know, how communities can set up their own sort of Uber networks or Airbnb, like in a local sense. So both of those I'll be at, and they have very, like, similar mindset of what we're trying to achieve. So being able to talk to those types of people, I think, in the meantime, while we're waiting for you know, a MaidSafe specific event to happen.
Yeah,
those are great to attend.
I totally agree. Like the coders are super important, and getting them together to discuss ideas. But I mean, I come at it from more like with Tim and I have been doing this for about a year. Tim's been heavily involved. I've been sort of like 20% there. But just over this time, I just love the community that I see building around it. And like with any great community, when you have an event that explores the artists that are part of the event, have musicians come that are putting their music up straight away onto the network, artists that are using the network straight away, and just as a conference that is really a way for people to say, okay, here's everything that I can get involved with right now in MaidSafe, and sure enough, there's going to be it'd be a nice on-ramp for people that go to it to come back to their communities and say, this is something that we all need to get on board with and build around. Because it just seems like a no-brainer. If you're a cinematographer, get your stuff up on there as soon as it's out of the can, or in the can, as they say. Get it onto the Safe network, because now it's secure. Now it's provable that you had it there first, and it's your work. And so yeah. So I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to the first MaidSafe meetup, and I hope it's somewhere near me.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be spontaneous as well, right? I don't think it's not going to be up to MaidSafe to be organizing these. Well, perhaps we would like to organize one or two. It's going to be up to the rest of the community to organize their own, similar to the meetups themselves that happen in various cities around the world already. And I guess on that note, we also will be doing another kind of Google Hangouts thing that we used to be doing with David and Viv a while ago, before the whole Rust thing happened, and we decided to take a step back and rewrite everything. So we were doing these Google Hangouts that were focused on developers, but I think a lot of people just joined just to kind of get an update. And we'll definitely be doing some more of those very soon. Probably one that's focused on how, once once people are able to join the global network, the global test network setup, we'll probably do one focused on that, and then another one that's focused on, when the API, more things for developers to get into. We'll do another one around that. So I guess keep an eye out for that. We don't have any specific dates yet. I'm kind of like on standby from the core team to see when we can kind of estimate when to do one.
Oh, and I got to head out again, but I was wondering, since you communicate with everyone on a regular basis, I was wondering if you could put a call out for photographs of the people in the community of developers and of the different pods, to because I'd like to get something together for the magazine effort that we're trying to put together here, and just for all, I think it would be awesome for contributions to come in directly from the people at the pods, of maybe their hangout. And cool.
Yeah,
well, I'm really happy I had a chance to meet you, Paige.
Thanks, Rick.
I'm gonna head out.
Perfect, Rick. I'll tell you what, before we went live, it's a perfect time to sort of wrap this up. And one of the things I just got to ask you, Paige, I mean, it goes really right back to the beginning of this conversation, it's kind of a full loop. We were talking about nature and stuff at the beginning of this. Now, last time, we were face to face, you were literally about to go off into the wilds of Scotland. So, I mean, there you go. Well, what did you enjoy about most about the trip into the wilds of Scotland?
Well, so we were, Ross, Ben, and myself went up to the Highlands. I think it was like my last day or the second to last day I was in town on that trip. And yeah, it was a real like quick day trip. Ross drove us up, and we did a bit of hiking. We saw. It was actually. I think that was my first trip to Scotland and Troon, and I was super super lucky about the weather because every day was very sunny and warm, and we went up to the highlands, and like it was a little foggy in the morning, but the clouds like broke open as we drove through the valleys, and it was just really it was really epic and surreal kind of experience being, you know, just being within that sort of beauty and seeing the mountains. And there's a few pictures. I don't know if they're on the internet or if they were just circulated internally of myself, Ben, and Matt. Myself, Ben, and Ross, and but it was like and Ross is a really awesome photographer, by the way. I'm not sure if you knew that, but he, like, I don't know, just like that whole experience of being able to hang out with these two guys that I got along with really well, and yeah, just being able to sort of feel the you know, the inspiration from Mother Nature and everything that David had been, you know, talking about being inspired by nature. I could just totally feel being in Scotland because that's, you know, that's the nature that inspired him. So I definitely could feel the just like the power in it, and, you know, the accepting of, you know, that we are just like, we are these little ants, and we are and, you know, we're these like vulnerable little individuals that really need to be working together to make a better world, obviously, you know, indirectly for ourselves, but for the whole of society. So I could just, like, I don't know, that trip, even though David didn't come with us, I could totally feel the, you know, the fact that how inspired he was by Scotland, and just like, yeah, and just hanging out with David, honestly, is like super inspiring because he's just like, he has so many ideas about how to save the world that it's just like, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would definitely concur with you, and but I think it needs to be said again and again and again. You know, he's no one special. He's just an ordinary human being. He's just someone why I think the greatest thing about David is he's had the patience to do this.
Oh
He's,
my
you know,
God, yeah.
and
He's
that to me, you know, I don't want to blow smoke up his ass, because that, you know, that's not the point of it. He's
no.
you know, and I like you say, they're very, very inspirational people. Look, Paige, it's been absolute privilege and honour tonight. It's, like I say, it's been a conversation that's been a long time coming, and
Yeah.
now before we finish on this, where can people sort of, you know, reach out to you? Where can they find you? Where, you know, how can they get in contact with you or follow what you're doing?
So, I mean, if people want to follow the work that I do for MaidSafe, everything that I basically do gets tweeted out on the MaidSafe Twitter. So just at MaidSafe. Whether it's like speaking at a conference or writing blog posts, which I think I'm going to be focusing on those two things a lot in the coming months. And, you know, if you feel like, you know, finding me personally or following what I do personally, because I like to focus on, I like to help with, you know, mesh network type things and Bitcoin, and I'm trying to get back into art, so we'll see if that's successful. I'm on Twitter at Ioptio, which is IOPTIO. And if you want to email me, I'm just at I'm Paige.Peterson, SON, at MaidSafe.net, and I'll get back to you in those ways. Those are the best ways to contact me.
Well, like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure tonight, and I tell you what, Paige, I look forward to maybe in a few years' time, after all this is done well, we can sit down, and I'd love to collaborate with you. I'd love to do some artwork with you and an art project with you. So maybe one day in the future, you know,
Totally.
we can put the shout out now. But like I say, cheers. Absolute pleasure tonight for coming on. And
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I'll see you in Troon soon as well. Who knows?
well, I think the way it's more likely, it's going to be more likely I'll probably see you in America because I've got people like Daniel trying to pull me across to America. So
All right. Yeah.
So hopefully I'll get one day to see San Francisco before the old Bill Hicks joke says, before it falls into the ocean.
Yeah, Arizona Bay, yeah.
Exactly, Arizona Bay. Well, on that fantastic, that's a perfect Zen way to finish this podcast, Arizona Bay. Well, for me in Scotland and Paige over there in San Francisco, man, it's good night from all of us. And life is people.
Bye. Thanks, Tim.